I knew something was wrong the moment Ethan Caldwell said synergy in a meeting about printer toner. 3 days into his new internship, and the VP's son was already walking around the office like he owned the building. He sat in my chair, sipped from a $10 smoothie, and started lecturing us about streamlining operational bandwidth while gesturing toward a supply chain chart I'd spent weeks building. Circle back on this offline, he said, pointing at my screen like he understood any of it. Offline? We were drowning in expired licenses, unpaid invoices, and a warehouse backlog that could fill a football field. There was no circle back. There was only chaos. But I smiled anyway. Because that's what you do when the VP's son plays dress up as an executive. You smile, you nod, and you pray he gets bored and goes back to golfing on company time. Only Ethan didn't get bored. He nested. By week 2, he was rewriting assignments, forwarding confidential client emails to himself for transparency, and adding Chief Operations Visionary to his email signature. To external clients. I wanted to say something. God, I did. But there's an unspoken rule in corporate life. Never be the one to correct the boss's family. Especially when your rent depends on their mood swings. So I kept quiet, smiled through gritted teeth, and cleaned up his mistakes at 11 p.m. while chewing stale pretzels from the vending machine. Then the air shifted. Auditors were coming. Compliance review. External, not internal. Which meant if something looked off, heads would roll. The kind of sweep that makes executives sweat and assistants cry. Rumor was we were on thin ice with a $90 million contract from Nextrix Systems. Something about tampered files, inconsistent version logs, missing approval stamps. The kind of small errors that become federal-level problems if someone decides to dig deep enough. And Ethan? He suddenly got very interested in the compliance portal. "Hey, Olivia," he said one morning, too casually, holding a thumb drive. "What's the admin key for the audit archive?" I stared at him. "That's not public access." "Come on," he laughed, adjusting his designer watch. "We're on the same team." I smiled. "Sure, Ethan. A team where only some of us end up with handcuffs." He laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. After that, he started showing up early. Which, if you knew Ethan, was like seeing a raccoon using a spreadsheet. Twice I arrived before sunrise and found his office light already on. Once I heard the click of my drawer as I entered the room. He jumped, muttered something about client decks, and scurried off. I didn't touch it. Not yet. But something inside me went cold. That drawer held project files, old memos, nothing sensitive. But the way he shut it, quick and guilty, stuck with me. The next morning at 6:52 a.m., I came in early again. Coffee still steaming, monitor still humming from being left on overnight. And there it was. The red folder. Sitting halfway out of my bottom drawer. Thick, glossy, not one of ours. I stared at it like it was radioactive. My gut whispered, "Don't touch it." So I didn't. Instead, I turned slowly to the small black webcam hidden between a row of dusty binders. I'd installed it months ago after my files started disappearing and mysteriously reappearing in shared folders with altered timestamps. Nobody took that seriously. Not HR, not IT, not even my supervisor. But I wasn't stupid. I logged into the local feed, scrubbed back to the night before, and froze the footage at 6:44 a.m. There he was, Ethan Caldwell, letting himself in with a borrowed access card. Probably his dad's. He moved fast, eyes darting, folder in hand. He opened my drawer, shoved it inside, and, God help me, took a selfie with my computer screen behind him. I could feel my pulse in my throat. This wasn't some dumb prank. This was evidence tampering, a setup. If I'd opened that folder first, reported it, or even mentioned it, he could have twisted it all. Said I planted it. Said I'd been manipulating files. They'd believe him. He was a Caldwell. I was just an analyst. So I didn't react. Not yet. Instead, I smiled when he showed up at 10:30, wearing sunglasses indoors and smelling like expensive failure. He nodded at me, pretending nothing had happened. I pretended too. I waited until he disappeared for lunch. Then I walked to his glass-walled office, shut the door, and looked at the briefcase he'd left open on the chair. Black leather. Monogrammed. Expensive, and empty enough to make space for one glossy red folder. I took a photo, time-stamped, before I touched anything. Then, carefully, I slid the folder from my tote bag into the case, half sticking out behind his laptop like he'd just forgotten to put it away. Another photo. Another timestamp. Then I zipped it closed, walked out, and sat back down at my desk as if nothing had happened. When he returned, he barely glanced at me, but his shoulders were tight. He kept looking over, waiting for me to panic. I didn't. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't scared. I was ready. And when the compliance team arrived an hour later, badges on their lanyards and tension thick in the air, I finally understood what peace felt like. It was the silence before someone else's world fell apart. The compliance team arrived at 11:07 a.m. on a Thursday. No warning, no calendar invite. Just 5 people in black polos walking past reception like quiet storm clouds. One carried a tablet, another a folder marked Internal Review, Priority Level 1. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that makes keyboards stop mid-click. By the time they reached the operations floor, even the office chatterbox, Greg from procurement, had lost his nerve. He whispered, "Is this about Nextrix?" But nobody answered. I didn't need to ask. I already knew. Ethan must have realized it too, because his voice cracked from his office. "Hey, team. Everything all right?" He came out smiling, that empty corporate grin people wear when they think charm can erase paper trails. His sleeves were rolled just enough to show off a gold watch. His father's graduation gift. Janine, head of compliance, ignored him and spoke to the room. "Everyone, please remain at your desks. We'll be conducting an immediate review of data access, physical records, and storage areas. Cooperation is mandatory." People glanced around nervously. Phones stopped ringing. Even the printer paused mid-job like it didn't want to draw attention. I sipped my coffee. Steady hands, heartbeat calm. My folder was no longer in my drawer. It was right where it belonged. Inside Ethan's briefcase. They started their sweep in finance, then legal. I watched their reflection in the glass panels as they moved closer. My coworkers pretended to work, typing gibberish or staring at spreadsheets. You could almost smell the collective fear, cheap coffee and anxiety. When they finally reached my desk, Janine gave me a curt nod. "Miss Roberts." I smiled politely. "Of course. Let me know if you need anything." They opened drawers, checked under the keyboard, glanced at the desktop. Clean. Predictably boring. Just how I'd planned it. "Thank you for your cooperation," one of them said. "No problem at all," I replied. Then I watched them move on. To Ethan. He'd been pacing since they arrived. Tried to start a conversation about collaborative transparency. Janine cut him off with a sharp, "Mr. Caldwell, please remain seated." His laugh came out too loud. "Sure thing. Yeah, all good. I've got nothing to hide." That's the thing about people like Ethan. They can't stop talking when silence would save them. I pretended to check my email as they entered his office. From my chair, I could see their reflections. One opened his drawers, another flipped through folders, then the briefcase. A compliance officer, short, serious, the kind who probably organizes her spice rack alphabetically, unzipped it. She hesitated for a moment, then pulled out the red folder. She said something to Janine, low, almost inaudible. But I didn't need to hear it. I saw Janine's face shift, just slightly. Enough to know she'd found what she was looking for. Ethan leaned forward, fake casual. "Something wrong?" Janine's reply was surgical. "Can you explain why a restricted document was found in your personal briefcase?" His jaw slackened. "What? No, that's not mine." Janine didn't blink. "It's tagged with compliance metadata. Your name appears in the edit history. he stammered. I I was just reviewing it. Olivia gave it to me. Every head in the room turned. Even the intern stopped breathing. I looked up slowly. Calm. Neutral. Excuse me? She did, he blurted. She's been acting weird all week, sneaking around the records room. Ask anyone. Janine stepped between us. Let's keep this professional, Mr. Caldwell. We'll verify all access logs before making conclusions. He laughed nervously again. Great. Yeah, check them. You'll see. She's been covering her tracks. I met his eyes and said nothing. Because silence is louder than shouting. At 11:48 a.m., Janine and two others escorted Ethan to the glass conference room. The door closed, blinds half drawn. Through the blur, I saw him gesturing wildly, his face reddening by the second. Word spread fast. They found something. Someone whispered near the coffee machine. In his briefcase. Serious stuff. Another murmured. Tagged files, altered logs. By noon, nobody was working. We were all listening for the next sound. The door opening, footsteps, maybe raised voices. But there was nothing. Just the low hum of fluorescent lights and the faint whine of the air conditioner. Then, finally, the blinds moved. Janine stepped out first, her expression unreadable. Behind her, Ethan, pale, trembling, holding his briefcase like a shield. He scanned the room, eyes darting, searching for an ally. He didn't find one. You, he said suddenly, pointing at me. His voice cracked. You set me up. I didn't move, didn't blink. Janine turned sharply. Mr. Caldwell, I'd suggest you remain quiet until this review is concluded. He ignored her. She planted it. She's been targeting me since I got here. A few gasps rippled across the floor. I folded my hands on my desk. Ethan, I said softly, you might want to stop talking. He opened his mouth again, but this time Janine cut him off. That's enough. You'll be escorted to HR until the investigation is complete. Ethan froze, disbelief spreading across his face. Escorted? Two security officers appeared at the door. Quiet, professional, not dramatic, just efficient. They didn't touch him. They didn't have to. His legs barely worked as he followed them out, muttering something about his father, about misunderstandings. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time all day, people exhaled. Janine looked at me, her voice calm. We'll need to verify your version of events later this afternoon, Ms. Roberts. Of course, I said. As she walked away, I caught my reflection in the darkened monitor. Same neutral expression, same tidy bun. But behind my calm eyes, something new flickered. It wasn't relief. It wasn't victory. It was patience. Because I knew this wasn't over yet. And when the real storm hit, when his father showed up, I needed to be ready. The building was unusually quiet after Ethan was escorted out. You could hear the hum of the HVAC vents and the faint clicking of the wall clock above reception. People whispered behind screens, pretending to work while secretly waiting for updates. Every email notification made someone flinch. I didn't celebrate. I just sat there, staring at the blinking cursor on my screen, pretending to update a risk report that no one would read. I knew this calm was temporary, because in corporate politics, power doesn't vanish. It escalates. And Ethan Caldwell's father, Richard Caldwell, was our vice president of operations. By 2:30 p.m., the whispers began. He's here. He's in the elevator. Janine just got a call from upstairs. Then, like the temperature dropped 10 degrees, he appeared. Tall, silver hair, perfectly combed, expensive navy suit. The kind of presence that made people straighten in their chairs. Richard Caldwell didn't yell. He didn't need to. He just walked through the office like a quiet storm everyone wanted to avoid. His assistant trailed behind, carrying a tablet and a small stack of printed documents. The kind of papers you didn't want your name on. He didn't look at anyone. Not HR, not compliance, not even the department heads. But when his eyes landed on me, he paused. Just a second too long. "Ms. Roberts," he said evenly. "In the conference room, please." Every head turned. My stomach tightened, but I stood up calmly. The key was never to let them see fear. Inside the glass-walled room sat Janine from compliance, Melissa from legal, and Richard Caldwell at the head of the table. Ethan wasn't there. Thank God. I took a seat. The blinds were half drawn, leaving stripes of late afternoon light across the table. Richard clasped his hands. "I've been informed my son was questioned regarding a serious breach in compliance protocol." Janine nodded. "That's correct. We found restricted material in his possession." He turned to me. "And you're suggesting he planted it?" I met his gaze. "No, sir. I'm suggesting he tried to plant it on me." Silence. The kind that stretches thin. Janine tapped her pen. "We reviewed keycard data and access logs. Ethan Caldwell entered the operations floor at 6:43 a.m. using your badge ID, Mr. Caldwell. We believe he borrowed your card." Richard's jaw flexed. "Impossible. My card hasn't left my wallet." "It did," Janine said softly, sliding a photo across the table. A still frame from the security feed. Ethan swiping the card at the side entrance. Richard looked at the photo, eyes narrowing. "You have footage?" "Yes." Timestamped and verified Melissa from legal added, "There's also documentation recovered from his briefcase." The files match the metadata of those recently flagged for irregular edits in the Nextrix contract. He stayed silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, "And Ms. Roberts' involvement?" Janine looked at me. "She's clean. No trace of tampering. Her activity logs, badge history, everything checks out. She's the one who provided the timestamps and photos that confirmed the file's chain of custody." Richard turned his gaze on me again. Heavy. Appraising. "So you were monitoring him?" "I was monitoring my own workspace," I said. Things started disappearing. Thumb drives, reports. I installed a local camera for security. He leaned back, eyes still locked on mine. "You understand how serious this is. If this story leaks, it could cost the company millions." "I understand, sir," I said. That's why I stayed quiet. I didn't go to HR. I didn't make noise. I just collected proof. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Respect, maybe? Or the faint realization that his son had underestimated the wrong person. Janine spoke next. "Mr. Caldwell, as of now, your son is suspended pending a formal internal review. Legal will coordinate next steps." Richard's voice was low. "He's still my son." Janine didn't flinch. "He's still accountable." That was the first time I'd seen a man like Richard Caldwell look small. He stood abruptly. "This conversation stays in this room. Ms. Roberts, you'll keep your evidence confidential until legal concludes their investigation. Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, sir." He left without another word. As the door closed, Janine sighed quietly. Melissa packed her notes, murmuring, "Brace yourself. He's not going to take this lying down." "I wasn't planning on lying down either," I said. By 4 p.m., the office had emptied out early. No one said goodbye to me, but a few gave quiet nods as they passed. Sympathy, maybe. Or caution. I stayed late as usual, reviewing a batch of system reports. My monitor glowed faintly in the dim light. My reflection looked unfamiliar, tired, sharper somehow. At 6:11 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Olivia Roberts?" The voice was formal. Male. "This is Detective Vance from the Metro Financial Crimes Unit. We've been forwarded evidence from your compliance department regarding possible falsification of corporate records. I'll need to speak with you first thing tomorrow morning." My throat tightened. "Is this about Ethan Caldwell?" "Yes," he said. "We have reason to believe the tampering may extend beyond internal misconduct. Some files appear linked to overseas accounts. The company requested full cooperation overseas accounts. Of course. I exhaled slowly. I'll be there, I said. When I hung up, I just sat there for a while, the silence pressing in. Ethan thought this was just a game. Nepotism, charm, and cover-ups. But this was bigger. This was criminal. And as the last office light flickered off, I realized something important. I hadn't just protected myself. I'd just opened a door that might take down an entire family. The next morning, I arrived at the precinct 15 minutes early. It was a gray Friday. One of those mornings where the sky looks like wet paper and everything feels heavier than it should. I clutched my coffee like armor and rehearsed what I'd say for the 5th time. Stick to the facts. Stay calm. No speculation. Detective Vance met me in the lobby. Mid-40s, tired eyes, crisp shirt. He didn't smile, just motioned for me to follow him into a small interview room that smelled faintly of burnt coffee and floor cleaner. A recorder sat on the table between us. "Appreciate you coming in," he said, flipping open a file. "You're Olivia Roberts, operations analyst at Hartwell Systems?" "Yes." "You were the one who discovered evidence related to Ethan Caldwell?" "I documented it," I corrected. He planted a folder in my desk. "I verified it through my personal camera before returning it to his possession." He nodded, jotting notes. "You took photos?" Time-stamped, both before and after he looked up, studying me. "You seem methodical." "I work in compliance," I said simply. That earned the faintest smirk. "Fair enough." "Walk me through the events of the morning you found the folder." I recited it exactly. No dramatics, no speculation. Just the facts. The time I arrived, the way the folder looked, how he entered the office with his father's badge, how he took a selfie near my desk. When I finished, Vance nodded slowly. "Your company's compliance team already confirmed your story. What I need from you is context. Context, motives, patterns. Did Ethan ever talk about money? Foreign partners? Anything outside normal operations?" I thought about it. "He mentioned a consulting opportunity once. Said he was going to impress his father by landing a side contract with a European vendor. He never said which." Vance tapped his pen. "That lines up. We traced several unauthorized document transfers to an IP address in Frankfurt. Files tied to your Nextrix contract. Looks like someone tried to broker internal data off-site. Pricing models, license structures, corporate espionage. Essentially, I felt my stomach tighten. And you think Ethan..." He raised a hand. "We're not jumping to conclusions. But all the logs point to his account and devices. We just need to confirm there wasn't external access." "I see." He leaned back. "You did the right thing, Ms. Roberts." Quietly documenting instead of reacting, that's rare. Saved your company a fortune, maybe even its reputation. I nodded, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like relief laced with exhaustion. After signing a formal statement, he walked me out. Before I left, he added, "If Caldwell's lawyers contact you, direct everything through our office. Don't engage personally." That part made me pause. "Lawyers? Already?" He sighed. "He's a VP's son. They move fast when the walls start closing in." By the time I got back to the office, word had spread. Ethan hadn't returned home the previous night. HR had locked his accounts, and IT had been told to isolate his devices. The rumor mill was working overtime. Half the floor thought he'd fled. The other half thought he'd been arrested. Richard Caldwell hadn't been seen since yesterday. His corner office lights were off. The air felt lighter, but not comfortable. Like everyone was holding their breath. Janine approached me mid-morning. "You spoke to the police?" "Yes. They wanted clarification on the audit trail." "Good," she said, lowering her voice. "Legal's preparing for potential fallout. The press could pick this up if Nextrix leaks the breach." I nodded. "Is Richard still with the company?" She hesitated. "Technically, yes. But he's been placed on temporary leave. They're reviewing oversight failures, temporary leave. That's corporate language for 1 foot out the door. Later that afternoon, I was summoned to conference room B. This time, Graham Lair, the CEO himself, was there, a man I'd only ever seen on shareholder calls, never in person. Calm, deliberate, intimidatingly quiet. "Ms. Roberts," he began, "I've read your report. Impressive work." "Thank you. I understand you handled this situation independently. Why not escalate sooner?" I met his eyes. "Because I knew how it would look. I'm a mid-level analyst accusing the VP's son of misconduct. Without proof, I'd be unemployed by morning." He nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now I have proof." A small smile ghosted across his face. "You understand, this situation will have repercussions far beyond our department." I assumed as much. He folded his hands. "The board has already met. We're cooperating with authorities. Mr. Caldwell Sr. has been asked to step down pending investigation. Ethan will face charges if the evidence holds." Hearing it out loud made my chest tighten. I didn't feel triumphant, just tired. Graham leaned forward. "You've demonstrated judgment and integrity under pressure. I'd like you to stay on. Possibly lead a new internal risk division." It was a generous offer. Better title, higher pay. But I hesitated. "Thank you, sir," I said, "but I'm not sure yet." He studied me. "Because of how this all started?" "Because of how easily it could happen again." For the first time, his expression softened. "Understood." Take the weekend to decide. I left the room with my head spinning. By evening, my inbox flooded with messages. Some congratulatory, others cautious. Lorraine from Records slipped me a note with 2 coffees. "You might have just saved this company, or ended a dynasty." I didn't reply. I didn't know which one it was yet. At 6:47 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Detective Vance. "Ms. Roberts," he said, "update for you. We've confirmed unauthorized funds tied to Ethan Caldwell's account. Wire transfers, encrypted communications. It's not just internal misconduct, it's federal now." My grip on the phone tightened. "Thank you for confirming," I said quietly. He paused. "You sound calm." "I've been waiting a long time for the truth to speak for itself," I replied. And for the first time since this began, I realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes revenge isn't about what you do. It's about what you don't. By Monday morning, the office didn't feel like the same place. The usual hum of chatter, the smell of burnt coffee, the sound of phones ringing. It was all replaced by an uneasy quiet. Half the staff were avoiding eye contact, and the other half were whispering near the printer, trying to sound like they weren't whispering at all. Over the weekend, the company-wide email had gone out. "Vice President Richard Caldwell has resigned effective immediately." No explanation, no farewell note. Just that. And Ethan? He hadn't resigned. He'd been removed. Word spread that he'd been arrested late Friday night at his apartment. The detective's voice from the call replayed in my head. Federal now. He wasn't exaggerating. Financial fraud, falsification of records, corporate data theft. It wasn't just a career-ending scandal. It was a life-altering one. When I walked into the building that morning, people stepped aside. Some smiled in quiet acknowledgement. Others avoided my gaze entirely. Nobody said it, but they all knew. Lorraine from Records was waiting by my desk with 2 coffees. "You did it," she said softly. "I didn't do anything," I replied. "He did." She smiled. "Yeah, but you let him." That made me pause. She was right. I hadn't fought back with shouting or politics or rumors. I'd let him sink by the weight of his own arrogance. At 10 a.m., I got another email. Meeting with CEO Graham Lair, conference room A, 10:30 sharp. The room was nearly empty when I arrived. Just Graham, Janine from compliance, and a man I didn't recognize. Corporate counsel, judging by the tailored suit and the cold precision in his eyes. "Ms. Roberts," Graham said, gesturing for me to sit. You've been remarkably composed throughout this entire situation. I wanted to thank you personally before the next phase begins. Next phase? I asked carefully. Janine handed me a folder. Inside were printed documents, official statements, audit summaries, and at the bottom, a letter on company letterhead. Promotion offer, Director of Internal Risk and Compliance Oversight. My throat tightened. I wasn't expecting this. You earned it, Graham said. We're rebuilding the department from the ground up. People like you are the reason this company survived. I read the offer twice. The salary was almost double what I was making. Private office, full discretion over internal investigations. It was the kind of position I'd worked years toward, but somehow it felt heavier than it should have. Before you answer, Graham continued, there's something you should know. The Caldwells have retained legal counsel. They're claiming Ethan was coerced, pressured into actions beyond his control. I met his eyes. You mean they're blaming me? They're grasping at straws, Janine said firmly. The evidence speaks for itself. We've reviewed your camera footage, timestamps, every log entry. There's no question who planted what still. I felt that old, familiar chill, the instinct of a woman who knows how easily truth can be twisted when power and money are involved. Graham leaned forward. You'll have full support from our legal team if they pursue it, but I don't think they will. Richard Caldwell knows how deep this runs. I nodded, silent. When the meeting ended, I didn't rush to accept. I walked out with the folder under my arm, down the hallway where everything had started, past Ethan's old glass-walled office, now stripped bare. His desk was gone, the nameplate removed, only a faint square of clean carpet where his chair used to sit. I stood there for a long time, staring at the emptiness. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt like closure that came too late. That afternoon, I packed my things. Slowly this time, not because I was leaving, but because I finally could. A few coworkers stopped by my desk with quiet smiles. Lorraine gave me a cookie wrapped in a napkin and whispered, "Never underestimate the quiet ones." At 5:03 p.m., I took the elevator down alone. The doors closed, and for the first time since this all began, I let myself breathe. Really breathe. My phone buzzed just as I stepped outside. A message from an unknown number. They finally believe you. I don't. You'll hear from us soon. RC. I stared at the screen, unreadable expression. Maybe it was intimidation. Maybe it was desperation. Either way, it didn't matter. The truth was already out, and no message could undo that. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine, rereading the promotion letter under the warm hum of the overhead light. For the first time in months, I felt steady. Not victorious, not vindictive, just steady. When people talk about revenge, they think it's loud, explosive, something that ends with shouting and slammed doors. But that's not how it really works. Real revenge is quiet. It's patient. It's letting someone write their own ending, one bad decision at a time. The next morning, I walked back into the office and signed the offer. Not for the title, not for the money, but because someone had to rebuild what people like Ethan had nearly destroyed, and because silence, when used right, can be louder than any scream. As I placed the signed document on Graham's desk, he smiled faintly. So, you're staying? For now, I said. Someone has to make sure the next storm doesn't start in a drawer. And as I left his office, I caught my reflection in the glass. Composed, sharp, unshaken. The quiet one who remembered everything. The one they should have never underestimated.